this little shit. Hey Death Trippers, welcome to the second volume of Deathtalk Trailers. We're going to get right into it with 1980's Absurd, directed by the legendary Italian director Joe D'Amato. This Halloween knockoff reunites D'Amato with his longtime actor muse Luigi Montefiore, who Italian horror fans will know as the hunkerific 103-foot maniac George Eastman. Eastman rewrote the original movie's script to capitalise on John Carpenter's 1978 classic, and at the height of the seasonal slasher craze, chose to set this movie during the season of Super Bowl weekend. The film literally depicts this by having all of its adults dress up in evening wear and get together to watch the football with a big bowl of spaghetti. Eastman plays the movie's killer, a strange mutant called Mykos, who's a homicidal maniac with Wolverine-style regenerative powers. He escapes hospital at the movie's outset and then terrorises a local family, while being hunted down by a priest-slash-professor character, this movie's Sam Loomis, who is played by English thespian Ed Purdon. It's definitely a pretty sick flick. There's some head sawings, a nurse gets drilled through the skull, a babysitter's forced into an oven, another girl gets a pickaxe through the forehead. There's definitely more than enough gore on offer, but the downtime between these scenes does drag. Absurd doesn't quite have the persistent sense of dread that you'd find in Halloween or other similar slashers. In fact, there's one suspense sequence toward the end that's so poorly drawn out it's actually aggravating. Absurd makes up for this right at the end with a fucking killer final shot, one of the best endings in the genre for sure. Absurd is considered like a pseudo-sequel to D'Amato's own 1980 splatter film Anthropophagus the Beast. Honestly, this connection only works if you can believe that Anthropophagus grew his hair out, slapped on some trendy bootcut jeans, and learned how to ride a motorbike. Absurd has the strange notoriety of being the first film alphabetically on the official DPP Video Nasties list, and unbelievably it didn't actually get past uncut in the UK until 2017. It also has a whole bunch of other names, including Rosso Sangue, Anthropophagus 2, Grim Reaper 2, Horrible, Zombie 6, and hilariously, Monster Hunter. Nobody tell Capcom. Okay, we have just 1 minute and a lot to get through. This is the excellent teaser for 1990's Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. It's one of the best teasers of all time. It appears to be advertising a pleasant drama. It then has a King Arthur vibe, before finally revealing the masked nutbag Leatherface in all his glory. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 was released by New Line Cinema, who had a nightmare getting the flick past the MPAA. It was the last American movie ever to receive the X certificate before that changed to NC-17, and it took nearly 2 decades to be released in the UK in uncut form. Texas 3 is a very gruesome and a very sadistic film, but it fully embraces the cartoonish satire of the American family as presented in the second film. It stars Viggo Mortensen in one of his first theatrical roles, as well as Dawn of the Dead's Ken Foree. It also has 2 very distinct cuts with very different endings. After all the chaos involved in getting it on the big screen, it flopped big time and became the very definition of a cult favourite even among the dedicated horror community. Great trailer though.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Do you believe in ghosts? Indeed. This is the gorgeous American trailer for Mario Bava's equally gorgeous 1963 horror anthology Black Sabbath, which is known in its native Italy as I Tre Volte fa la Paura, The Three Faces of Fear. The film is a collaborative effort of multiple countries and production companies, designed to pull in audiences in both Europe and the United States. American International Pictures scored actors such as horror legend Boris Karloff and Mark Damon, or as this trailer calls him, the personable Mark Damon, while Italian production company Galatea was responsible for much of the film's crew, including Bava himself. This trailer has a great line around here where it says something like, "The film stars lush and lovely women, even though one is from the netherworld." There are 3 disconnected stories on offer. The Telephone, a sort of modern mini giallo starring French actor Michel Mercier. An old school gothic horror monster haunt called The Verdelak, which is the short that features Damon and Karloff. And finally the incredibly creepy A Drop of Water, which is arguably the most Bava of the 3 chapters and perhaps the scariest segment. Karloff also appears in the movie's bumpers and finishes the film off with a very silly but very delightful final sequence. As soon as Black Sabbath was completed, there were immediate problems between the two production companies. They had competing views on segment order, on dialogue, on soundtrack, even just the look of the movie. AIP recut the film, trimming some of the violence, saturating the colour, and even replacing Roberto Nicolosi's subtle score with some blaring horror horns from Les Baxter. Most notably, the telephone segment has huge dialogue rewrites in the US cut, which adds a ghost element and removes all the LGBTQ references. Regardless, it was all mostly for naught. Black Sabbath underperformed in both markets, despite how beautifully Barber paints his movie. I mean, I'm biased, because I think the man was a powerhouse, but even I'll admit that Black Sabbath is one of Barber's most style over substance movies. But despite this style, Black Sabbath did flop in both Europe and America, and like so many films of its type, would only find its audience among the dedicated horror community decades later. At least Ozzy Osbourne found a way to make some money out of it. Here we have a rare TV spot for Bob Clark's iconic 1974 thriller Black Christmas, under its original and Warner Brothers' preferred title of Silent Night, Evil Night. Predating Halloween by a few years, this independent Canadian film is essentially one of the West's earliest slasher movies. Its premise is an adaptation of the classic "The calls are coming from within the house" urban myth. The cast here includes genre stalwarts John Saxon, Margot Kidder and Keir Delay, with our final girl being played by a young Olivia Hussey, who took the role after a psychic told her the film would make a ton of cash. This psychic knew her shit, clearly, as Black Christmas returned a $4 million box office on a $600,000 budget. Today it's still a really atmospheric, creepy film, but the action rolls out at a pretty leisurely pace. It might be a little slow for those expecting typical slasher fare. Black Christmas would be remade twice, first in 2006 with a loose adaptation by Glenn Morgan, and more recently in 2019 by Sophia Takal and a gang of nut-busting sorority sisters. And we're winding up Volume 2 with some semi-glossy sleaze from Messrs Golan and Globus. This is 1986's The Naked Cage, Cannon Films' very, very late entry into the notorious women in prison genre. It's the story of a farm girl, Michelle, who's played by Playboy cover star Shari Shattuck. She finds herself up to her doe eyes in danger after becoming involuntarily involved in a bank heist alongside the wild-maned psycho gal Rhonda, who's played with scene-chewing glory by Lucinda Crosby. Michelle fast has to learn the ways of Chokey as she tiptoes around violent guards, gang wars, and a ruthless warden, Diane, sadistically played by Angel Tompkins. Our hero will be forced to fight dirty if she's ever going to get out in time to see her pregnant horse give birth. No, really. As a women in prison movie, The Naked Cage is okay. It lacks the grime and the grit and the sleaze of Jack Hill's 1970s films. It's written and directed by Paul Nicholas, who previously brought us Chained Heat, and while The Naked Cage isn't nearly as brutal or as mean-spirited as his earlier film, it still has its fair share of sleaze. Ultimately, The Naked Cage is about 10 minutes too long, and it's certainly no big dollhouse, but it will definitely fit the bill. And that's going to do it for Volume 2 of Deathtalk Trailers. Thanks a lot for watching. Please like, subscribe and share with any like-minded film fans. Stay tuned for future episodes, and please take a second to follow us on Twitter over at DT Trailers. Catch you next time, Death Trippers, and remember, just watch the best bits.